Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up from March 23rd through 29th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 4 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 1 book. First this week I read A Million to One. This is historical fiction about these 4 ladies who are trying to do a heist on the Titanic. And I think we all know how the Titanic ends, but this book does a really good job of making you forget that that's definitely going to happen at some point. We get this book from the perspective of these 4 different characters, the first one being Josepha, who is basically getting the band together, as it were, in Dublin. She's got this best friend, Violet, who she often works with, so obviously she's going to be on the team. And she's going to play a pretty big part in this scheme because she's a really good actress. Somebody that I've worked with a few times before is this girl named Hinna. She actually works for the circus. And she does a lot of like acrobatic type of tricks, but she's also very good at making herself very small and getting into different places that people usually wouldn't be able to get into. Our 4th and final addition to this party, I believe, was Emily. Originally from France, although born in Haiti, her father died not too long ago and she's an artist and she's been trying to go through that grief process, which basically means she's been trying to do a lot of painting and not a lot of it's going her way. Josepha brings all of these people together because there's a rare and beautiful artifact that's going to be transported on the Titanic to New York, and she decides that they should steal it. However, as you come to find out, that's not her whole story, and all of these other girls, we get to hear their whole stories as well. I thought this was decently put together and decently paced. I always like the writing style of this author, although I did have a lot of questions, such as, yes, I understand that Josepha stole all of the tickets that they would need to get onto the Titanic, but how did that automatically make it so that the girls were in 2 berths right next to each other? Like, I don't understand how that would have worked. However, I was willing to suspend my disbelief just to figure out what was going to happen with these people, because obviously we knew getting towards the end of the book, and basically this book is counting down to when that event happened, there's a good chance that everything they go through is for naught. And I will not reveal to you how that historic event affects these 4 characters. Out of all of the books I've read by this author, this one was just kind of okay. I'd like to see her do more historical fiction because I enjoyed this, but it just wasn't my favorite. The next book I finished is I Am Made of Death. This is a dual perspective book between Vivian, who has a demon of sorts inside of her and is basically at the beck and call of her evil stepfather to use it whenever he wants, and Thomas, who has recently been employed as her interpreter. Due to an incident that happened when Vivian was 4 years old, she no longer speaks because when she speaks, bad things happen to the people that hear her. So she's basically taught herself sign language. And that's where Thomas comes into the picture, because obviously not everyone Vivian has to talk to knows how to sign, and he is there to step in when she's in those situations. However, she doesn't want him to be there. She doesn't want another person that is employed by her stepfather to kind of push her around. And she's basically trying to make him quit. However, that's not going to happen because he really needs the money for this job. This job pays very, very, very well, and he's got his mother and his kid sister at home that he wants to support. This one gets very layered and interesting, and you're trying to figure out what happened in the past to make the present what it is. But then you also have these very internal conflicts because Vivian, for example, doesn't want to be the way that she is and is actively seeking out an exorcism of sorts. But obviously that's not something that her parents, and especially her stepfather, is going to be interested in her doing. So she has to be very sneaky about it, and she can't really trust Thomas because he's employed by them. However, Thomas honestly does just want the best for her, and we see that develop into a romance as time goes on. This one definitely gets dark and creepy, and you have an entity that has basically been there forever just trying to take in lifeblood, and all of these circumstances where people have gone from just talking about things online to actually creating these societies. By the end of it, I didn't really want to rave about it, but I did enjoy my time reading it. As for the shows I watched this week, I started in the 7th season of Shetland and I finished all the way to the end of the 9th season of Shetland, which is currently all that exists. The 10th season will come out sometime this year, but it's not out yet. And there's definitely a big thing that happens between these seasons, because by the end of the 7th season, one of the characters actually retires, and then we go into the 8th season having to replace that role. And we did that, although I was a little bit skeptical because I was like, oh, this person should be getting the role, and like even the main actor of the show should be this person and not this new person. And it's not like I don't like the new person, she definitely grows on you, but I was very worried that she was just going to like come in and usurp this character that I really, really like, and I was not down for that. This show continues to be beautifully shot, and I really enjoy this whole format where every season is now one big case and there's all these interconnected things and you're trying to figure out exactly how things went down, and I just really enjoy this show. I also really enjoy that one character in particular is going through things you've seen a previous character go through, in that you can't really have that many close friends if you're the big cop in this area, because as soon as you do your job, people don't feel like you're a friend anymore, which is just really unfortunate. This week we also watched the first 4 episodes of the 6th season of What We Do in the Shadows, which means I believe we're in the final season, and I think it finished, or there's no more after that. I haven't looked it up. All I know is that the last 3 episodes of this season, neither Megan nor Chad have watched before, because this is a rewatch that I'm doing specifically with Megan, whereas I haven't seen it before. So we're getting really close to the point where we're going to have to make sure that Chad is around when we watch those last 3 episodes. This season has some weirdly sweet aspects in that a couple of characters are trying to help out another character, and whether or not they're actually helping is kind of debatable. Whether or not he sees how much they're helping is a little bit debatable. Also, the costuming, because they were in these different roles, had to change, but very specifically for the woman that plays Nadja, the costuming had to get a little bit different, for the reason that costuming often changes for women in roles where their personal lives are very different than their show lives. Like I said, I don't know if this is the last season as in it's finished now, or the last season as in there's more coming but it's just not out yet, and I'm going to miss these characters, honestly, because they are really fun to follow around in this documentary style that we've got going on in the show. I will also briefly mention that we stayed current in Jetlag the game, Shenzhen Showdown, and we've got this very funny situation where they're getting close to even, but because of something that happened in a previous episode, there's a chance another team is going to get screwed over by the chance that they're making, and it's just going to be interesting to see what happens, because I think we're on like day 4. We don't really end the episode at the end of a day type of thing, so I think we're into the 4th day and it's a 6-day challenge, and I could not imagine all of this flying around and running around. I think I would have been exhausted by now, but I suppose when you're zipping around Europe on somebody else's dime it might be a little bit different. As for the last show I watched this week, it's the first 3 episodes of Vera, which coincidentally is also based on books, and also based on books by the same author as Shetland. I didn't do that on purpose, I was just kind of flipping through BritBox trying to find another show because I finished Shetland, and I was like, okay, another detective type of show, I wonder where this one is set. And then I started it and it was like based on the novels by Anne Cleeves, and I was like, okay, good, at least I'm gonna like the first few episodes for sure. And this one is set in the Northumberland area, so around Newcastle-ish. If they've mentioned exactly which station she's at, I haven't picked it up. But they did mention Northumberland as a whole, and there was a character that came in to the port at Tyne, which I've been to, although I was going in the opposite direction of him, so I was able to figure out kind of where in the UK we are. This, as you may have been able to guess, follows Vera. She is, I think, a DCI. I think that's what the job title is. In any case, the head honcho in her workplace, and she is solving crimes. At the very beginning of it, we know that somebody in her life has died, and you come to find out that it was her dad who had a hoarder house, and she's gonna have to deal with that situation. And she's kind of a gruff and explosive character, and she's kind of prickly. And if this were a male character, everybody would be like, oh yeah, he's genius, but he's just a little bit weird. So I'm giving her the same grace I would give to any other character. But yeah, she's not the easiest to get along with, but she definitely solves murders. What's also really interesting about these first 3 episodes is each of them is based on a book, and each episode is about an hour and a half long. So they didn't do the same thing that producers did with Shetland, where they split it up into 2 episodes. They actually did hour-and-a-half episodes. Also, I think this has like 14 seasons, so it should take me, you know, maybe 3 to 4 weeks to get through, at the pace that I usually go through these things. As for the one movie we watched, it was another throwback, and that's It's a Mad, 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 Mad World. Neither of us had ever watched this before, we didn't know anything about it, and as we were watching it, Chad just kept pointing out, oh, they spoofed this on The Simpsons. Which, yeah, they definitely did, although he has a more encyclopedic knowledge of The Simpsons because that was a show he used to fall asleep to, so he would watch a lot of episodes that I have not seen, and some of them I've only heard. At the beginning of this movie, we have these people just driving down this highway, and this one other car is going super fast, passing these 4 different vehicles, and that car goes off a cliff, and the guy gives his dying declaration about where all this treasure is buried. And the people who came down from the cars hear this, and they're like, interesting. Treasure, you say? And it basically becomes a race to figure out who can get to the treasure first. And they're obviously trying to keep it to themselves, but to get help and get advances, they try to get other people to help them all along the way, and it's just ridiculous. And this is a long enough movie that there was an intermission in the middle of it. It's from the 60s, and there was this one scene with this dancer and her boyfriend who actually comes into it more than just this scene. And I feel like I've seen that iconic dance sequence parodied somewhere, but I could not figure it out. So if anybody knows what I'm talking about, please let me know. However, I did find out that the iconic dancer in that scene is also in White Christmas, which I only watched this last December. The character that says mutual, I'm sure. And she's still alive. She's 91 years old and she is still alive. Well, good for her. Her name is Barry Chase, by the way. This is one of those very big slapstick type of movies, and it's also one of those movies where it just has everybody in it. Like the Three Stooges show up for some point. There's all these names that I'm like, yeah, I've definitely heard that name before, but I'm not really well versed in this era of movies, so even though I've heard these names, I couldn't actually point these people out, and I had to do a lot of like Googling to figure out what they would have looked like at this time frame to be like, ah yes, this one is Buster Keaton, and that one over here, that one is Mickey Rooney, and I think that one is this guy, and Ethel Merman was in it as the mother-in-law. And then the guy from that dance sequence I was talking about is also in The Producers, the old version of the movie, as LSD. So yeah, it was funny, but it was also really long. As for the book I listened to this week, that was Invisible Women. This is a nonfiction book about data bias and how we don't even really collect a lot of data to do with women, which is a shame because that's a disservice to approximately half the population. And as much as some people would like you to believe, women are not just small men. Actually, I just talked about this book in the last video I posted, which was the Get to Know My Taste tag. But one of the stories I told in that is I was actually listening to this as an audiobook while I was driving, and then this section of the book came up where it was talking about the auto industry and how women are much more likely to be injured or die in car crashes because cars aren't tested for people of our size and proportions, and if they are, then that female-sized dummy is always in the passenger seat, and even then women in the passenger seat when men crash are more likely to be injured than the men themselves. So, you know, that was a great thing to be listening to while I was driving. Honestly, based on what little data we do have, there are so many wild statistics talked about in this book, and it's true, we just need more statistics so we can fix more of the world's problems. And we need more women in power or on committees because then whole swaths of things aren't just completely left out. For example, and this one is just wild to me, there was a place that had a natural disaster, they had to rebuild a bunch of houses, and because the committee behind this was all men, they didn't include kitchens in these houses because, you know, kitchens, that's women's work. Why would we remember to do that? Whereas I'm sitting here going, I'm no architect, but you know, there are 3 things I need to do on a daily basis: sleep, eat, and poop. And like, you need a space for all of those things in your house. That's just not hard to think of. So yes, I absolutely highly recommend this book. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down in the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!